Andrew Sheng, president of the Fung Global Institute. He's also, by the way, this is a by the way, right, chief advisor to the China Banking Regulatory Commission, which is a pretty big job. Andrew, good to see you here in the Hong Kong studio. I'm going to start off with talking about the stimulus, because that really is why we're seeing a sell-off. We saw gains and a rally into the close yesterday. But when they say no large-scale stimulus, it doesn't mean that there's not going to be any stimulus, right?
Well, you need to understand China's a continental, very large economy, and there are signs of slowing. China has a very good record of good macroeconomic management. That means steady as she goes. So, I guess the 12th five-year plan basically targets 7%. Mm-hmm. So at the moment it's around 8. Yeah. And I guess, 7 to 8 is a pretty good number by any standard.
In China as well.
Yes.
CICC, as Stephen Engel's pointing out to us, which is one of the first brokerages, investment banks in China, saying that if there wasn't any stimulus, growth would just be 6.4%, which in an economy of 1.3 billion people that's emerging, that would constitute, some would say, a hard landing.
Well, you have to understand that the 12th five-year plan is being implemented right now. And, you don't need any special stimulus package. You just need to bring forward some of the projects that have already been approved, and just push them
deviates, doesn't it, here, Andrew,
yeah,
from what they want to do, which is move it to a domestically orientated economy. That's right. Almost been put on hold while we go through this, and the rebuild and or reposition towards infrastructure again there does that, doesn't it?
No. Look at what's been happening. Different parts of the ministries have been announcing they're using fiscal tools, right? They're giving subsidies for buying refrigerators, TVs, and now talking about cars,
right,
for energy-efficient equipment. Okay, so that's both great for consumption.
Yeah.
That's great for production of energy-saving.
But it does
industries.
take away forward demand. That's the problem there, doesn't it?
No, not necessarily.
China's
such a large economy. There's a lot of people, and they're moving more and more into middle class, and so therefore consumption is there. It's just, it's just waiting for the right moment.
Andrew, in your view, how fast is China going to grow this year?
I think between 7 to 8 is a pretty good number. 7 to 8 is a pretty good number. So, of course, the external environment is very, very uncertain with what's happening in Europe.
Yeah.
And that's something we can talk about.
Right.
Which we're going to.
Okay, this is what I want to know about stimulus, because in 2008, I felt like they preempted the rest of the world, coming out with a stimulus package of over $600 billion in November 2008.
Yes.
That was before other initiatives from the Federal Reserve and other central banks around the world. This time around, people are thinking $315 billion. Don't they need to get ahead of the curve at this point?
Well, I think a lot of people, think that you need big packages, and the lesson from the 2008 big package was that, if you're not careful, there could be certain overshoots. And so therefore, I think this time around, it's much more measured. You need to be.
They learned their lessons, in other words, to say.
Exactly.
Yeah, because it probably like a bull in a china shop, pardon the pun.
Well, 2008 was very special, right? There was the earthquake. The economy was clearly slowing, and then there was the shock of the Lehman crash. So this time around, I think a lot of people have digested, what's happening in Europe, and that's why they're much more measured.
So $315 billion measure?
Well, I won't put a number into this, but I think, if you just bring forward, some of your planned expenditure, the whole idea is move towards a more socially inclusive society, more environmentally friendly, deal with the anti-pollution.
And as you say, when is fiscal policy stimulus? So, there's the grey areas in all this, aren't
absolutely,
there?
Absolutely.
Andrew, what's your view of what's happening in Europe?
Well, they're going through very much the pains that we went through during the Asian crisis, 97, 98. And, events unfold every day. You wake up in the morning and something has changed.
Well, China has a central government. It's not 27 different nations trying to work together with their own fiscal plans. Do you imagine that the euro could break up?
I think people talk about that. I think the core Europe will remain. That's my personal view. I have great confidence in my friends in Europe. It's very tough, very tough. But you must remember, Europe is a very rich place. The trade is tremendous between each other. So there's a lot of bond between them built up over the years.
Some have said also that they've been living beyond their means for many, many years as well. So you say core Europe should be fine. Does that exclude
I think
Greece?
So.
In
well, I wouldn't
months?
want to make any prediction about anybody, but Greece is in a very tough place. I care a lot about Spain. I think Spain is very, very critical. I think Spain will, where the major defenses will have to be mounted.
Right, but do you imagine that there might be contagion to Spain and they might need a bailout?
Well, my own lessons from crisis is that you have to put a stand somewhere, and I think Spain is as good a place, and it's pretty important economy, not just for Europe but for the world.
So I'm going to try to read between the lines here, Andrew, and basically you're saying that the focus should be on Spain. Maybe the money in these bailout funds should be focused in on Spain as well.
Well, I'm sure the Europeans will know what to do. That's a big political debate.
Right, and does China know what to do right now? I mean, is China as healthy, especially with the banking sector? We've heard people like Jim Chena saying that China's on a treadmill to hell. It's being led by the banking system and the banking sector.
Yeah, I always read Jim Chena's stuff, and I say, whoa. Am I reading the same numbers? I think, you have to understand China is a very large economy, still growing. 7 to 8% is a good number by any standards. I think, the macro numbers are still very, very good. Overall government debt is only 40% of GDP compared to somewhere near the 90s for Europe, and still heading north. So the balance of payments is still in an okay number.
I'm sure you all remember, Mr. Sheng, from the Inside Job, which is the Academy winner, right? The award winner in documentaries. And then, what did you say back then? Is that we pay bankers too much? We pay them like engineers?
I basically said that if you paid why are we paying financial engineers more than physical engineers?
It's there's always this claim that it's all about the search for talent, etc., etc. And if other industries are paid as well, perhaps you get some of the best and brightest going there and actually helping the world at large in a more manifestly better way.
Well, the main point about finance is that it must serve the real sector. That's an Asian perspective, right? And I think over the last maybe 10 years, finance has gone its own way. It's become a power in its own right.
Almost feeding on itself.
Well, the problem is that when it fails, all of us pay for it.
Yeah.
So in this case of J.P. Morgan, I think we were talking about this, right, Mia, with this $2 billion trading loss, that they might be taking back some of the bonuses that were doled out. I mean, why not? When you lose the bank about these huge sums, do you agree with that?
Well, that's up to the board of directors. My personal view is if the best risk managers out there have problems managing that risk, what about the rest of us?
Well, this conversation is fascinating, of course, because today is probably not a surprise to most Americans that Romney clinched the nomination for the Republican Party. And, of course, the debate there centers on the role of private equity, the role of finance in the economy, and everyone talking about the role of Bain Capital in the finance industry, and also in respect to the public industry. But I have to imagine, to Rishaad's comments earlier, there's also some real good that the financial industry does as well. They don't need to get more into these high payments and these high salaries, but they do some good as well in terms of creating these economies.
So.
Well, finance has been a very good engine of growth, particularly in Asia. I think I can't imagine Asian growth without a strong, stable, financial system behind it. And that's into the future, right? Because we need to transform Asia's financial system into its next phase of growth. This is what we at the Fung Global Institute is trying to study.
What is the next phase of growth, Andrew?
It's going to be sustainable growth. We have to go into a green economy. If every Asian consumes like the average advanced country economy, there are no natural resources left. So
within hours, probably.
We need 2 to 3 Earths, as they say. Right? So we need to understand that a lot of us who grew up in Asia understood that we should live with nature.
Is there the recognition of that, do you think, and is it getting any traction out there with some of these developing countries?
I think there's a lot.
About sustainability?
For instance, China, Spends more than any other country in the world, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
But per capita against that's, dwarfing many other advanced nations.
Educating the youth in China and part of that growth strategy going forward? Not only youth, but also the youth who live not necessarily in this, Beijing and Shanghai, the center parts of the Chinese economy.
I teach in Tsinghua, And my students tell me they want better air quality, they want better water quality, and they want a better quality of life. And that's very reasonable. And so that's exactly what the 12th five-year plan is trying to do.
You need
to
students
shift.
to tell you that?
Oh, yeah, maybe.
You don't know it yourself?
Well, teachers don't learn from their students, put it this way.
Oh, that's very nice.
It'd be nice to see the sky in some parts of China as well.
Well,
you
yeah,
know, that's been a problem.
Especially in Beijing,
But
where
it's-
Tsinghua
yeah,
is.
it's beginning to change as they address, as they, try
Did
to
you
do-
see any signs of change? I mean, in the quality of the atmosphere, etc.
I think, the quality of air in Beijing, we've seen more blue days than the last few years. But of course, there are days when it's
Well,
not good.
okay, well, you talked about the 12th five-year plan. We have a new government, well, at least new leadership in China in September. Mr. Xi Jinping, I believe the premier himself, who is that going to be? Li Keqiang, I think. Now, what do you think about this new leadership? Are they going to be staying on the sustainability economic path in China? Is there no need for markets to be concerned about a new leadership coming in?
No, I think it is, as I said earlier, it's as steady as they go. They realize that they're moving into a new phase of growth. It is much more greener. It's going to be much more greener. They have to address a lot of these pollution and environmental issues. They are focusing on social stability, social harmony, and social inclusivity. These are major issues.
Andrew, does China perhaps disappoint the world then when it says, as it has effectively today, that there will not be another $500 billion stimulus program to grow that economy and lift up all the other economies in the world? Do you think China's sending a fundamentally different message this time around?
No, I think when they mean not a big stimulus, what they I interpret it as they will be kind of much more measured. Right? If you need to understand you cannot push the economy, a large one like China, too fast, because they would have inflation consequences, right? And so therefore, this time around is much more measured. It needs to move in the direction which they've already planned for under the 12th five-year plan, which has been 3-4 years, in the planning. But they can now bring some of those investments, fiscal changes, subsidies. Earlier.
One big China story I think we missed today is about the yen-yuan direct trade that's being installed now, so you don't have to convert the yuan into U.S. dollar and then change it into yen. Okay. Do you think that's basically what's happening right now, globalization of the currency? That's going to be an opening up of China? And does that mean also more appreciation?
Yeah, just another step of the internationalization,
right?
isn't it?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, for two major trading partners to, trade in the renminbi-yen transactions. So it's going to happen on Friday. I think it makes a lot of sense and will facilitate trade. You need to understand that, within Europe, for example, there's a huge amount of intra-regional trade. And that's beginning to happen in Asia, much more than people think.
Okay, Andrew. Thanks for stopping by.